Yeah, shall I start? Yes, good morning everyone. This is a very nice moment, very intimate moment. And I'm very happy that we have such a beautiful delegation from Lebanon connected to our week of Lebanese cinema, which is the main retrospective of the 50th KVIFF International Film Festival. I am very happy that a very esteemed journalist, Joseph Fahim, who wrote a catalog article about the retrospective, will be moderating this small talk. And before I pass him the mic, I'm very happy to introduce our filmmakers' guests. And I'll start from Corinne Shaw, the director of MUA, Georges Choucair, in my opinion, the most important producer in Middle East. Thank you very much for coming, it means a lot to us. Elie Daguerre, who is a fresh winner of Golden Palm from Cannes for a short film called Waves 98, which we added to the lineup at the last minute, and we are very happy. Congratulations to the Golden Palm. Doesn't happen every day. Philippe Aractingui, a very famous filmmaker, who brought his film Under the Bombs and presented it a few days ago. And you are finished. Very nice. I am a producer with Philippe. And Aractingui, yes, collaborator and producer. Welcome. Oh, very sorry, I forgot the most important person in the room, Miriam Sassin, who kindly helped me with the retrospective and who works with Georges Choucair in public productions in Lebanon. And, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks a lot for Jonathan Barry for hosting such an event. It's not every day that we have a retrospective of that magnitude in major festivals. So, like for not only for Epson, not only for Libanese cinema, but for Epson, I think this is a big thing for us. I'd just like cut to the chase. Basically, we're going to start first talking about the production modes in Lebanon. Like for Lebanese cinema is one of the oldest in the region of the Middle East. And, like for quite some time, like especially in the 60s and 70s, it had major infrastructure. It was quite popular. It became more popular. At some point, it was competing with Egyptian cinema, which is the biggest in the region. And then, of course, the war happened and the dynamic changed. And the focus of this perspective is supposed to be Lebanese cinema. And since then, as I said, the dynamics of production has drastically changed. And first of all, the productions relied heavily on French money, and then, of course, at the beginning, the past 25 years after the war, in the past 15 years, even more changes have occurred. So my first question, I guess, to George first and across the board, can you talk us a little bit about how the landscape of Lebanese cinema production has changed since the war and until now?
Since war, maybe I began in 06, so it was maybe 10 years after the end of the war. But the main changes, in my opinion, was the structure of the productions in the Middle East and in Lebanon especially. We were just producing, I think, with private money, with small movies. The director was totally alone. It was, in my opinion, a bit amateur. And bit by bit, the producer came on board, and the production were more structured with the French producer mostly in the beginning, and the production were in majority French usually, and the production at the Lebanese side were a minority. And step by step with the festivals in the Middle East and the Gulf, with the evolution of the market, the movie were more structured and better structured. And now we have maybe 15 or 20 movies with a range of independent movie to the commercial movie. And I hope it will evolve.
Is it easier finding funds now than, let's say, when you started?
Yes. It's difficult, and maybe now it's more difficult than 2 years or 3 years ago, because I think the festival at the beginning, and the Gulf especially, were more excited and were maybe putting more money in the beginning. Now it's more difficult. But we have 2 or 3 different new things. We have the TVs, which are a new actor in the system. The market is bigger. The screens are, I think we tripled the screens or more in Lebanon, so it's easier, the market is bigger. And you have some commercial and big movies, very successful commercial movies, who help the investors to push a bit some movies. So yes, I think there's more money, not enough still, but more.
Philippe, you've had a unique experience because you had in 2005 a big hit that was the musical poster, and then of course you did Libanonského, which was production-wise was I think like a different method. Excuse me.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. You've dabbled in different production models. Like in 2005, you had a major hit across the airport, which was the musical poster. And then afterwards, I think you adopted a different model with Libanonského. So can you also tell us a little bit your experience about production?
I'm going to reiterate what George just said, but maybe in figures, I just studied the figures recently because I'm preparing for a new feature, so I needed to show investors how things have evolved. So I studied a little bit the figures. In 2000 and I mean, after the civil war finished in 1991. We had a major success in 1997 with Ziad Douai's film with 75,000 entries, 76 or something like that, entries in the box office. The rest was small films that were produced with mainly French money and subsidies from Europe. And they would do 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 entries. At one point I came on thinking that if we need a Lebanese cinema, we need to I was writing scripts for, that kind of entities which produces films that are more for festivals than for general public. But I thought that maybe one should widen the perspective and think that if we need to produce films, we need also to reach the Lebanese public. And I've changed one of my scripts into a musical, and I've done it, and it was the poster you spoke about. And Poster was released in 2005, and it did 140,000 entries. I think this gave a little bit of incentive to the Lebanese to go and see Lebanese film, because they've seen one which was for them not that bad. I mean, it's mine, so I can say it's not that bad. But then, the next films that came in started making 30, 40,000 entries and that sort of things, like Falafel, like Zozo, like these kind of films, started doing much more than what used to be before. At that time, to carry on with figures, at that time we had 2,100,000 or 2,400,000 entries per year in Lebanon, 89 screens. We today have 3,700,000 people going to the cinema for 119 screens altogether in Lebanon, which gives us much more, much more people going into the cinema, so therefore much more people being interested in the Lebanese cinema. In the Lebanese cinema we have, depends how you calculate the figures, but we have around 9 to 10 films. Cinema. We have much more in documentaries and short films. But in cinema we have 9 to 10 per year, and among which we have maybe 2 to 3 that goes abroad, that are seen in festivals, are seen in cinemas outside Lebanon. The rest is really for a Lebanese market, and sometimes these ones that are for Lebanese market are very, very popular and are doing 160,000, 140,000 entries, which helps a lot investors to eventually come in and help. But so far we have no subsidies at all in the government. Not at all. We do have like between $6,000 to $20,000 per year per film eventually. to make a film from the Ministry of Culture. So we are obliged to go for Middle Eastern subsidies, European subsidies, and eventually beg investors so that they lose their money with us. Voilà. Regarding my films, I've done Bosta, which was a popular film. Then when the war started in 2006, again, I decided to go for a film with only 2 actors and shoot in the middle of the chaos. And I shot only a film with only 2 to 4 actors, actually, and the rest was real. That was also a big hit, but more internationally. Went to 40 festivals, won 23 prizes, was distributed in around in screens in around 7 countries, but in televisions and so on was sold to 33 countries. And my third film was an autobiographical story, much more personal. Voilà.
Ellie and Corinne, you two completely were outside all of this, even do-it-yourself style, coordinating your time agents to accomplish your movies more personally. Can you also, let's start with Corinne, can you tell us also about your experience of how do you do your movies?
Yes. Well, I have no idea about figures because I wanted to make films as simply as that. And so while I was actually, before I went to the film school, I started filming, and I just like to film. And my parents got me a camcorder, a compact one, Panasonic, with the tapes in it. And I started filming, and then I wanted to do, I like documentaries, but I didn't really know what is a documentary. I thought it was like just infos. And then I discovered while watching films that it is very wide and it's a film, you know, beyond the genre. And then when I finished the film school in Lebanon, I continued this, what I was filming actually. And my first film is titled De Famban. It's about the Sri Lankan women working in Lebanon, but it's actually about one woman who is called Dulika, who lived at our place for 6 years. And I was filming her before I went to the film school. And then after I finished, they had the tsunami, and I went with her to her country. And this was my first film. Which
you applied no funding?
No. My father, who was my producer, got me another camera, which is the PD-150, and I filmed with the PD-150. It was a 62 minutes film, and I edited myself. I got the Avid, the pirated software, of course, and I edited at my place. So that was the first film. And then I applied for a lot of seminars, actually, and workshops, and this is how I made my films. So I made one with the Arab Institute of Film. It was called Oxygen. It's about my brother, and it's about a kind of migraine, a cluster headache he has. And yes, I worked within this workshop, and it's a 30-minute film. So they gave me money just for the 2 months, and I bought a laptop and I edited on it. Then, well, step by step, this is how I made my films. With Ashkal Alwan, another association in Lebanon, gave me some money to make another film, which is called Affinity, and I traveled with my friend, and it's about like the limit or of friendship. Where does it stop? It's called Affinity. I just check what I've done. Yes, then there was a very important step in my work when in 2006 I went to the film school, National Film School of Denmark. And there I met the director of the department there, of the documentary department. And there it was like, okay, everything is possible. And it was like a new approach to film. And I actually teach now the same method in Lebanon, in university there. And after this seminar I went again and I did a film called Film of Welcome and Farewells. And the film school funded my trip and my stay for 6 months to do another short documentary, which is 20-something minutes. And it was always like digging, but not by forcing myself to like get something personal out of me. It was like, it's like this actually. And how I proceed is that I have an idea, it becomes an obsession, and I do it by making a film. So it was there I did a film about farewells and how you say goodbye to someone or something. Then I made another film it was co-directed with a Danish person called Nikolai. It's called Je t'aime infiniment, I love you forever. And it was also funded by CPH Docs, which is, it's a program within CPH, the Festival of Copenhagen. And they matched 2 directors and they funded our film. And it was about loneliness and death, again. Yes, and Umué actually was my first film with Miriam, with the collaboration with George as well. And it was for the first time I have like somebody to take care of the film. I started alone, I filmed for 5 years, from 2008 to 2013. After 2 years, I went to Miriam, I said, listen, I have this film. And she was like, okay, yes, we were at the same university, so she started working on it. And we met a co-producer by chance, again, who was in Vision du Réel, and who I was pitching there for my film. And of course, they didn't get anything, so we were like, okay, what to do? And there was this seminar about how do you produce films that are not, they cannot be produced. So we went to this, and we found this guy, and he funded our film. Because it was accepted at FID Marseille, and he was eager. So, yes.
Eddie, like, you also had a completely different experience because you also developed animation, and that's not very cheap to do.
No, at all. Well, actually, I only did 1 year of animation studied. Initially, I wanted to do filmmaking, but since they told you how difficult it was back, I mean, that was 12 years ago, when I wanted to start studying, my parents told me, no, don't do that, because you'd end up doing music videos for pop stars, and there's no future besides that. And actually, back then, I did go to Nadine Labake behind the scenes. Yeah. Back then, she was doing music videos, actually, before she did her first feature. So I just went, but she was doing the first sort of good music videos in the region, so I went to see how it all works. I was like 16, 17 back then. But still, it was music videos, so it didn't tempt me that much, I guess, eventually. So I went into advertising initially. And then I did a bachelor's in illustration, and then a year of animation, because it was like slowly leaning back towards film. And I did my master's then in contemporary art studies, which is completely different. So my first film, which I did in the year of animation, is called Beirut, was in 2006. And since then, it was mainly sort of research and more art practice work in the last, almost 9 years, no less. And then I wrote the script, actually, and since I wasn't really in the field, I never studied filmmaking, and nor properly animation, I had to kind of figure things out myself. So I applied through AFAC, the Arab Fund for Culture and Arts, for subsidies for the film. And Ziad Douairi was actually on the jury. So we met afterwards and we discussed the script, and it was pretty helpful. And yeah, I kind of just did it. Yeah.
Where did you get the money for?
Mainly from AFAC initially, and then a year into the project, I got a post-production funding from DFI, Doha Film Institute. But by then I had like almost a complete project to show them. So it wasn't too difficult to convince them of supporting the film.
One of the main themes, probably like the most dominant theme of the current retrospective in here is the Civil War. And like for many years, most of like the movies that were coming out of Lebanon, whether it's like documentaries or video arts or fiction, were in many ways informed by the Civil War. And it also seemed as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, that even like funding for a book, like especially in France, it seemed as if that this was the main thing that they want to see, movies about the Civil War. I'm just curious, and again, this is a question for across the board. How do you think Lebanese cinema managed to emerge out of the shadow of the Civil War, and is it like, why is it still dominant now? Why do you think, like for each and every one of you are still concerned about the Civil War? Is it one of the subjects that that you think will still inform your work at some point?
Since I still have the mic, I'm going to answer first. Well, personally, I think it's just the Civil War itself ended, but was more of a ceasefire than an actual proper end to the Civil War. And nothing really, it hasn't really got that much better since then. So the situation is always changing, and there's always tension, and we're always affected by it. So it's just part of our daily lives. Not the Civil War itself, but just, let's say, the political situation of the region and how things go on. So I think it's good to come out of it, but it's always going to be somehow part of, I guess, Lebanese cinema to a certain extent.
It's an interesting question, because I think the West still sees us through the eyes of war. When I did write, I was telling that how I did Bosta. Bosta initially was my first feature was a story of guys who takes the bus, and they all have wounds within the war and tell their stories with the war. And then I've changed it into a musical where they dance Dabke, the Lebanese folk music, into techno. They change it. Anyway, the film was refused in France 18 times by different producers, Arte and so on. And the reason why I left France at that time is because the last person who told me why they didn't accept the film is that the reader of the script said it's a script which is loin de la réalité libanaise, which is far from the Lebanese reality. And I felt like, how come a French guy is telling me what is the Lebanese reality? So I felt so much, you know, I was so angry at that time that I left Lebanon, I left France, I was living in France, and I came to Lebanon, did a business plan and sold participation to sell rights to the film to investors. I did 3 films so far. One of them was really about the war, which is Under the Bombs. It's the one which went to most of the festivals, funnily enough. A different war, but you know, you say Lebanon, you say war, you say a film, they buy it. You say Lebanon, a musical, I'm not sure. I mean, you can tell me about that. I did another film which is an autobiographical story. Now, of course, it's my film, so of course I think it's a good film, but it's a different writing, you know, it's a mixture between personal archive and non-personal archive, and it's a little bit of documentary and a little bit of fiction. It's an invention by itself. People, I think, from Lebanon don't expect films that are not third world films. I think a typical, very good third world film, and that doesn't say that it's not a good one. It's like La Bicyclette, a Saudi Arabian film. Typical, talking about a subject, Wajda, yeah. It's about a subject that is hitting. And the way of filming has to be that kind of tripod kind of way of filming, you know, with a little bit of... It's hard to innovate out of Lebanon, because out of Lebanon they're expecting, I think, from us, films that are third world films that resembles third world stories with maybe a little bit of war. I don't know, maybe that is slightly changing within time. And I think that a lot of, you know, southern filmmakers, whether from Tunis, Morocco, and so on and so forth, are complaining about that and are saying, why can't we do a thriller Why can't we do, you know, a normal film? Do we have always to do issues, social issues that are hard, and so on and so forth? I'm trying for my next film a love story, which is very simple. What can happen anywhere in the country, in the world. Maybe that is going to change and slightly changing, but so far there is this preconceived ideas around what we should be doing and what we are. I don't know, maybe George has a different point.
Exactly. Do you think it's changing?
For me, what is changing is the perspective of the funds and the market, regardless to the regarding the independent movies outside Europe and the United States, maybe, or and Canada, which is for me the local movies. I don't think that Lebanon is just an industry that can do movies about war or civil war, but I think that we're supposed to do very local movies with a certain quality, I think. There is the Ethiopian movie Lamb showing here. You have there is Wajda, there is the movies of Elias Sleiman, Kiarostami, and the movies in Lebanon and other movies. I think the important thing is to have local stories. This is right, and I don't think that local stories in Lebanon are only war. I receive many scripts. They're not just talking about war, and it's not, I think, the main issue for the festivals or for the market usually. It's having the story that nobody can tell. I think that Europe there's 70 years of movies that is told everything maybe, and they're just reinventing themselves. So when they have some very particular story coming from abroad, it's important for them. War can be a subject, of course, but I think the most important thing is the quality of the script and the story as a story, the exceptionality of the story.
The same question, and then I want to ask you what you movie afterwards.
Yes, I will not repeat the same thing because there are a lot of Lebanese films that are dealing with war because this is what is expected from a country like ours. But I think that even if the films, I don't know, I can't speak about Lebanese cinema. I can speak about what I do, and I think that in my films, for instance, I don't ever speak about politics or war, but it is there. It is really there, because I was born in '81 during the war, and my parents were in shelters, and they lived this war, and I lived this war. So when for instance, when I interview my mother in a film like Oxygen, and she tells me when she was pregnant, because of war, she felt that her son, there was something like in her stomach, and she felt it was going to be bad. And the film is about my brother who was born like when she was under stress. So it is very political, I think, without like being pro or activist or I don't know, or claiming or exporting war, but it is there, completely there. Yeah.
Sorry if I interrupt. I also think if Lebanese, it's all of what you have said is true, because I mean what we expected and who's financing the films. But still, I would say that the Lebanese cinema has to talk about war because this war has not been digested, and it's a way to it's the only way, since there has been no trials of, I mean, nothing has been really dealt with in terms of with the society. So cinema is the only way to catalyze. C'est un catharsis of what is happening, and it's the only way that we have to express ourselves. And it's definitely not solved. So yes, I think the civil war will remain in the content, even though some people would want to do something else.
I want to talk a little bit about the evolution in the music of Lebanese film in the past, let's say 15 years or so, aesthetically. And I want to start with Kareem because, like your movie is quite remarkable in the sense that it blends fiction with reality. You also combine it with different mediums, combine video art as well. And what's interesting about your work is it's how frank it is, how honest it is. It's like two girls talk very frankly about their sexuality and their loves, which is something very uncommon in Arab cinema. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you establish such relationship with your subjects in order to spawn such a result of such remarkable intimacy?
Yes. For me, maybe the only difference between fiction and documentary is that you don't pay your actors, real characters. I mean, it's fiction, documentary. There are no boundaries. I mean, it's really now. I mean, we can't even speak about that. I mean, it's done. So, yes. Actually, till now, if I think about what I have done till now, it's two kind, let's say, of approaches. There are the films where there is my family or my very, very close friends, or like the people I feel comfortable with or that I trust. Dulika, the Sri Lankan woman who lived at our place for 6 years. So it's either this very intimate circle where I feel very comfortable, and the people I have access and I trust them and they trust me, and then I go for it and I feel very comfortable. So to establish it, it's already established. It has been for years, you know, and it's there. And I'm interested in these people and I just do it. And there is the second approach where I'm very tired of being very close and intimate and then I observe. And here, the first time I did it was in Copenhagen when I did film of Welcome and Farewells. And it was the first time I film persons I don't know. And it was really tough. And I couldn't be close to them. I couldn't. I was like really far, like filming, you know, like it was long shots or full shots. I couldn't do close-ups because I don't know them. But the very important and the very difficult thing about it was to find people who really wanted to be in front of the camera. I needed them, but I wanted them to need me as well. And it was very difficult to find people I don't know in Copenhagen in 4 months to just, you know, have this, not trust, they cannot, it's very short time, but to feel that they also need to express something. Not maybe for me, but express something. And this is how it worked, actually. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I'm just talking a little bit about your movie, because as I was saying, like, how did you manage to have these two girls talk so freely about the subject that you talk about?
Yes. Nanu is my best friend, so there are two main female characters in the film, Nanu and Rajwa. Nanu, we've studied audiovisual together in a Lebanese university, so I knew her for 5 years very well, and we're very close. So when I was thinking about love and asking these questions, she was experiencing complex relationships, like dating people I didn't really understand how she could, especially that during the university she was not dating anybody, and then like at some point she started and was like, okay, how could you do it, or how? And I was really interested to know more about it. And she would tell me everything, but this time I had the camera with me. And it was very difficult because at some point she didn't want me to film. She just needed to talk to me as her friend. But I wanted to film. So that was when to stop, when to listen. So it was a bit difficult to manage this. But we have the trust, so it just worked. With Rajwa, the second person, I didn't know her so well, but she is very open, so it was easy to access her. And then by time we became more close. And
Ellie, your movie is also has to do with trauma and like distress and fear, like this tension that is unpalpable, like unseen. Again, can you talk a little bit about that and why animation?
Yeah, well, initially when I wrote the script, actually I didn't know that it was going to be animation. Even when I started applying for funding, I actually didn't know specifically visually how I wanted to approach the subject. But as I started developing it more and more, it just seemed the best way to kind of have a mixed media kind of approach, because there's also a lot of live, especially in the background, and a bit of archive footage also in the film. Because the film is a very personal story in a way, but through a fictitious character and a fictitious kind of narrative. But I wanted to emphasize a bit on the real aspect of it by using those live footage and real archive things. And I wanted to keep actually the characters abstract. I didn't want to have too much attachment to the characters, and that actually was really helpful to have that in animation in the film. So yeah, I mean, initially I wrote the film as kind of a way for me to deal with my relationship with Beirut, with the city, because it's kind of always changing. And I mean, everybody will tell you there's sort of like love and hate kind of relationship that we all have with the city, and it kind of sometimes goes a bit more in one or the other. And I was traveling a lot, so every time I would go back to Beirut, it would be a bit more difficult to actually get back into the social bubble that we live in, just to be comfortable. So for me, the film was actually a way to deal with that. So in a way, there's two narratives in the film. One of them was set in the 90s, which was kind of an optimistic time where the city was rebuilding and we were sort of looking forward to the future. And one of today, which is not as optimistic in my view, at least from my surrounding, my family, and just the tension that I feel when I go back there. So there's these two narratives in the film that kind of go parallel, and sometimes they clash. And even throughout the first year of the film, actually, I didn't have the ending yet. So in a way, if you watch the film, it's going to be actually following me through the process of doing the film in the beginning. I did it really linearly, from beginning to end, through the 2 years. And it changed as I also sort of discovered things about my relationship and how I felt about it.
So, Philippe, you've completely had a different experience. Again, like aesthetically, you've dabbled in different genres. Like you dabbled with musicals, you've dabbled with ciné verité, you like with heritages, you've dabbled with like autobiographical, sort of like a homemade biography. Again, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Before that, I did documentaries, and I also did films on giraffes, as well as I did films on archaeology, as well as I did social films, as well as I mean, I hate repeating myself, maybe. And I love new genres. I mean, I feel like doing a Western someday in my life. So truly, I love cinema. So I love to try experience stuff which are new. I was always wondering what's the style I'm doing. But mainly there is a common point to all the work I've done. Probably not with the giraffes, but the rest, the fictional stuff, the cinema stuff, and the more personal documentaries that I've done. It's always an internal voyage trip, where a character is, sometimes it's a voyage like Bosta. It was a trip between friends from different places in Lebanon, and throughout that, their character would change. Under the Bombs also, it's a car traveling throughout the south of Lebanon, and within this long travel, there is characters which are changing inside. I mean, mainly the main character, the driver, who is in the beginning of the film an asshole who wants to get as much money as he can from the woman who he's driving, who's looking for her child, and then he at the end of the film helps her. So it's really internal voyages. And in Heritage, which is also stylistically speaking, totally different from both Bosta and Heritage and Under the Bombs, it's also about learning how to get to go through your past, because the film is really a voyage on 100 years of history, personal history, with my parents, because it's and grandparents, because it's an autobiographical story, but also the history of the Levant, and trying to go through all the big moments of what struck us in our family and struck the country in its history, to understand how to take all these bits of memories and put them away, and put them in a shelter, and says, okay, I've ended my story with the Civil War, I've ended my story with my father's war, my father's issues, and so on and so forth. And in that sense, the film is now used by schools. It's being shown in schools to discuss about history, and to to make people move on and forget about the past. This is what mainly Diane was saying. It's a catharsis kind of work. And maybe also Under the Bombs was also a catharsis kind of work. It's a way of going and showing the war so that you can get out of it. Bosta was also saying, I mean, the main line that the distributor in France used for the distribution of Bosta was "dance on my wound." I want to dance on my wound. Also a catharsis way of getting out of the past and heal it. Voilà.
I have one last question for George. So again, you've witnessed Lebanese cinema throughout all this time. What do you think is different now in terms of, again, aesthetically, Lebanese cinema now? Do you think filmmakers are being more daring? Do you think the stories are getting more mature? How do you think the quality of stories is now compared to, let's say, 10 years ago?
I think that the stories are I have more problems with the scripts than the stories. So it's more a production point of view. So for me, it's so if we go to the first question about production, what we realize that because it's very, very difficult to produce, now the stories are very severely comment on dit, jugé, plus difficilement jugé. So now, so I feel that sometimes the directors or the scripts are influenced maybe by the market and by what we are waiting from them, and it's maybe sometimes dangerous. We talk about war and about these kinds of things, but this is, I think, the problem for me is sometimes I feel that the directors and the screenwriter are trying to deliver what we're expecting from them and the market is expecting from them, and sometimes it's too diluted, or sometimes it's too compromised as a story, and it's not as pure as it can be, because everybody wants to have his movie shot. So it's difficult to try to help the scripts and to try to have to do this bridge between us and the funds and the market, and try to defend this small market, because it's very difficult if you don't have a commercial movie. You are independent. You depend on the Western world and the European co-productions, and you ended up doing things that are waiting from you. So it's very complex and sometimes not very fair. And
I'm quite surprised, because as a producer, you think that you would go for the movies that are more appealing a little bit to the market. not often made.
Our problem is that we don't have a very structured and local subsidies. We don't have subsidies, of course, and we're trying to structure things with everybody and lobbying to try to have subsidies. So when somebody is reading your script, usually it's or it's a Gulf fund, or it's a French fund of a German production, or a French producer. And we need, in my opinion, Lebanese money and subsidies and something structured in Lebanon to be able to judge the movies for what they're supposed to do and to be. And it's important. So it's not just for to have money, but to have maybe the movie we want to do. Voilà.
I would say that given the fact that we have no money and no subsidies, and therefore the industry, basically our directors more often are directors, screenplay writers, producers most often when they don't have the chance to have Georges. And so he's the only producer we have. Okay, we produce Philippe's film only. But no, I mean, basically, I think I would say, Georges, you would correct me, but what we definitely need is screenplay writers that only write stories. It's really the link that is missing in the industry, because I think we have a lot of talent and a lot of content, and every director has to be everything. And if we could only have writers who could only write for the sake of writing, then I think we would make a big difference in delivering films.
Before we wrap up, any questions?
Do you have any advice for young filmmakers? Anybody of you?
To shoot in Lebanon or
in general, or not to shoot only in Lebanon, but in general.
We have advice for young filmmakers.
He's a young filmmaker.
Just do it, I guess. I mean, I had no studies. I knew nobody in the business, no producers, not how things work. I just figured it out. I mean, there's always ways to find sort of your own ways around things, and I just do it.
So just be determined, I guess.
Yeah.
Any other questions? That's it. Thank you very much, and thanks again for coming out.